Welcome to the Innovation Room, the space we explore the application of technology and AI in business, the practical and sometimes philosophical ideas shaping our future. Long before the written word, storytelling was the primary means by which people passed down knowledge, traditions, and a very essence of the human experience. For thousands of years, stories have shaped our understanding of the world and inspired us to embark on adventures to build our future. You're not in the wrong podcast. It's still the Innovation Room, the technology and business podcast. Today, we are diving into the art of storytelling as a pivotal strategy for advocating AI adoption in business. Joining me is Lazar Dzamic, a renowned brand marketing expert and former Google consultant, who now imparts his wisdom at business schools in the UK and Europe. Laz will share how powerful narratives can persuade various stakeholders, from board members and investors to colleagues and customers, to embrace AI adoption. We'll explore tailored storytelling techniques that not only highlight the benefits and strategic importance of AI, but also addresses the common concerns and showcase real-world successes without being repetitive or boring. Whether you're seeking board approval, investor funding, team support, or customer buying, understanding how to craft a compelling AI adoption story of your business is crucial. I am Somayeh, co-founder of Geeks. Welcome to the Innovation Room. Hi Laz, very welcome to the Innovation Room again. It's lovely to have you. For the audience who don't know you or haven't listened to your previous episode, which was Digital is from Venus, which is very interesting. So if anybody hasn't listened to that, I would encourage them. But for the audience who don't know you, do you want to give a quick introduction about who you are?
Hi, really good to be with you again. And the thing that you mentioned about Digital is from Venus, we got kind of lots of really good feedback on that one. So I was really glad that we've done it. So my name is Lazar. I teach digital marketing, brand and communications, predominantly brand communications at various MBA and university programs across Europe. I teach at the Master in Promotional Communications course at Goldsmiths University in London. Also 3 or 4 different MBA programs, Rome Business School. Then there is the Executive MBA program for School of Economics and Business in Ljubljana, the economic faculty in Ljubljana, basically. There is the PricewaterhouseCoopers Mini MBA Academy in about 7-8 different countries in Central and Eastern Europe. And my only undergraduate assignment is with the Faculty of Media and Communications in Belgrade. So basically my focus, apart from Goldsmiths here, would be Central and Eastern Europe, and then teaching executives and students how to tell the stories in the digital space, but also how to build their brands, personal brands, organizational brands, how to talk to their employees through and develop the employer brand, and anything to do, to be honest, with brand development, brand strategy, and storytelling.
Wonderful. Laz, you're familiar with our tradition of starting the Innovation Room podcasts, which is basically who would you bring with you into the Innovation Room if you're wanting to do some proper serious innovation work, dead or alive, fiction or real?
Oh, that's an amazing question. Now, if we are in the workshopping situation, like really workshopping with the client, I have to say I would probably draw on some of my ex-Google Zoo colleagues, who all of them kind of have distinguished careers. Kind of one of the most kind of creative bunch of people that I've ever met in my life. So in that sense, I would probably bring one of them. If you're talking about any kind of iconic person, just to be able to inspire people with storytelling and reframe something for them, you know what? I very often quote Andrew Log Oldham, former Rolling Stones manager. He was their early manager, basically at the beginning of their career, because he realized had a big problem at the time, because the Beatles were everything, and the Stones just could not be the other Beatles, because the Beatles were already really nice and nicely dressed and everything else, and the Stones were kind of seen as copycats. And then he had an absolute brainwave, and he said, you know what? Story-wise, you have to be the opposite. You have to be the rough guys. You have to be the dangerous guys. Although most of them come from middle-class backgrounds, right, and studied art. And he said, you have to play the role of bad guys. And that was an absolutely brilliant advice. So he was a kind of a great hustler, great storyteller in the way that he was able to reframe based on the circumstances. He would be probably one of the people I would bring into a brainstorm.
Wonderful. In the innovation room, we are in a series called Our Future with AI, which we are looking into different sectors and what their future look like. So it's kind of, we are trying to find the story of each business with the AI and their future. And from a sector, each sector has a story, but each business within a sector could have their own story.
Yep.
I am a convert because you have taught me, so I know I know a lot about storytelling and business. But can you explain for our audience why storytelling is important in business, and why do you teach it at MBA? Because I'm sure it wasn't 15 years ago they weren't teaching, storytelling in the MBA program. So why now?
Oh, the interesting thing is when you look at one of the graphs that I usually show during my courses is LinkedIn research. They've actually looked at the word storytelling and how much does it appear in different job descriptions on LinkedIn. And in the last 15 years or so, you can see that it roughly from about 50,000 jobs descriptions to about a million
Wow.
now, which means that storytelling, we've discovered storytelling. And why we discovered storytelling is in a very complex world, and it is a very complex world in which things are changing very, very quickly, and in so many things are happening at the same time. Being able to tell the story about what is going on, what we want to do, how we want to approach things in simple ways and also emotional ways that people both understand it and can relate to it becomes an incredibly important skill to have. And also, both the research and personal experience usually shows that most of the problems that people have in, let's say, in life, not just in an organizational setting, is usually because of narrative mismatching, misalignment.
Mm,
That I believe in one story and somebody else believes in some other story. How are we going to go together in the same direction? If there is no alignment in narratives, that's simply not going to happen. So, in that sense, it pains me, I have to say, when I see that when we treat storytelling and communications and empathy, which is kind of at the heart of it, as the so-called soft skills. And for me, it's one of the hardest skills that you can have in today's world. And particularly with modern technologies and AI and similar things, where actually being able to empathize and storytell becomes one of the kind of critical elements of developing the technology further in so many ways. So I think that the moment is that storytelling is being recognized now as being an absolutely critical skill for the modern world.
mm. I think it's really important because with the stories we can talk about what has happened. So that's telling the story of the past, which help us to understand what how we have behaved, or what was the consequences of our actions, and then tell a story that we want to happen in the future and inspire people to follow us within that a specific story of the future. So I see two different side of a story, or two different functions of the storytelling. um
And you're right, and they're actually probably a part of the same continuum because that story, unless we really kind of want to change the heart of the organization, in which case we do require a new narrative. But imagine that it's the same company that is evolving just
mhm,
on time continuum. We are basically telling the same story. It's just that the stories from the past are here to reassure us that we already are kind of moving in the right direction, and then the stories about the future is actually to show us how we're going to kind of keep going along the same path and how we are basically living the same story. So, in that sense, if we do understand it, it becomes even easier because we actually not
mm,
changing nothing deep down. What we
mm.
are just deploying is different kinds of narratives to support the story that we had already.
Yeah, and I think I really agree with you saying that it's very technical, because when you look at the different types of a storytelling, they could be like the structure of a story could be complex or simpler. So with my limit, I'm showing off my knowledge. So the V shape or the W shape, so going down and up and down, or having multiple, ups and downs into the story. I think it's really important to realize where the business is within that story and where they want to go. So are they with the future and with what's possible, what's in front of them? Where do they want to take their story to make it a continuum kind of a story? So your new story is a new chapter of the same book of the organization, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that you mentioned, actually, Google scientifically had proven it some years ago, actually using machine learning very early on, scanning more than 2.5 million books within the Google Books project. I'm trying to remember. I'm struggling with names sometimes. And basically, they realized there's only 6 different sort of plots. These 6 plots that they've detected are all part of the sinus curve, which means depending what's the snapshot of the sinus curve, you actually have slightly different kind of shapes of the plots. You may be kind of at the top of the sinus curve, which means you are at the peak of your success. But then you can start going down if you do not change something, you don't realize what's going on with you. You actually go down and then you can stay in the hole. This is one plot. Or you go down and then you go up again, which is another sort of a plot. And all these kind of different kind of things. So we know that in a way, throughout the history of the humankind, we've been telling more or less similar stories. And that helps a lot because even in organizations, we know more or less how to approach storytelling on any subject. And I do not really subscribe to the notion that there are complex subjects, complex, boring things, complex companies. Everything could be simplified. Everything could be story told really well if you know how to do it. They're just boring ways to talk about it. Nothing is boring under the sun.
Absolutely. I remember one of your lectures that I was part of, and you were talking about, you were challenging there is no boring topic. It's the
No.
way you tell the story, and you gave us a really simple object and made us to tell a different story, and what people come up with is really fascinating stuff. So absolutely with you there. So bring it back to the AI topic and the story of each business with AI and the story of humanity kind of with AI. What are the biggest mistakes that you see, or what are the most common mistakes in a storytelling that you almost predicted, or you have started seeing it within the space of AI and the story of each business with AI?
Yeah, it's a very good question. From what I can observe, there are two big problems. One problem is confusion, meaning that AI can mean anything, right? And very often it does mean anything to people. And confusion stems from people not kind of focusing on what is critical for a particular context, but just kind of blue skying on all these possibilities, and people simply get paralyzed with the number of factors that are kind of going on. And also, people do not understand really what AI is and how it works and what kind of change it can do for them. And then the second one is fear that sadly, the nature of our modern media is that they make lots of eyeballs through fear. If they make us afraid, if there is a reason for us to feel anxious and similar, media make money. And that's a kind of a tried and tested formula that I believe is kind of has been pushed too far now. When you talk about any particularly new thing and particularly new change through the lens of fear, we lose what advertising people know as positive valence, which means that lots of research are saying that one of the strongest ways to convey the message is through showing the positive benefits, or the positive benefits in a positive way, optimistic way. Positive valence is a very strong motivational force. If you just play on fear, then a big psychological effect called cognitive dissonance starts happening. And that means that if I'm faced with something I don't understand, and it's really scary, instead of how we think rational behavior is to kind of go investigate it, I would just push it away. I would clamp down. I would try to forget about it. I would try to pretend that nothing is happening. La 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 la, nothing is happening, and that's it. And that's cognitive dissonance, and that is happening a lot now. So I believe that these two kind of mistakes clarify what it means for a particular context, different industries, kinds of companies, or whatever, and show the benefits of it whenever there are benefits. If there are negative sides, how we can mitigate the negative sides in a constructive way instead of just scaring people how scary things are going to be. I think these are maybe two of the biggest mistakes that are happening at the moment relating into AI.
It is very interesting because I have seen and I'm not just talking about the mainstream media, like in the user generated content in LinkedIn, for example. You see how much parroting is happening of the same sort of stories that has been told. So it's almost like even I, as an AI expert, who is looking for stories to understand what's happening and how different people are engaging with it, I find it really difficult to find a new story, an interesting story, an interesting insight of how an organization is engaging with it. I recently, I think it was last week, I saw something from Chief AI Officer of ThoughtWorks, which was, I can't remember when was the last time before that I had seen something that excited me so much that, oh, this is really interesting story that somebody is telling about how they are using. So he was talking about the fact that AI just intensifies your organizational dysfunctions. And that was a very, very interesting angle. And then he talked about ThoughtWorks dysfunctions and how AI is intensified and how is it,
We
you
had
know,
exactly the same. We had exactly the same phenomenon with the internet. Well, that's a very interesting thing because I've seen exactly the same phenomenon with the internet. For example, when the internet appeared, and then social media and everything else, people had exactly the same kind of things. Usually, kind of negative stories about the change and everything else. And what I can't remember who said it. It was a beautiful sentence. He said, "We should not forget that even more than changing things, technology actually reveals."
mm,
Technology is a force that really starts revealing all the deficiencies, all the kind of crap in thinking, basically the deficiencies in the system overall and in businesses individually as well. And it's exactly the same with AI. I would say probably even more powerfully because the level of change is much much deeper than the internet. So in that sense, it's a hugely revealing technological space that is revealing all of the kind of good and bad that is
mm,
happening in organizations. And one of the reasons maybe why, and I do agree with you, there's lots of repetition, there's lots of kind of sameness in the space. I was wondering myself why. I guess one reason is that people are not trained in storytelling. That could be kind of one of the reasons. The second one is the culture in modern companies. Very often, it's the copy culture. As a consultant, while I was still kind of working in agency with clients, one of the most heartbreaking situations was when I've been asked to do something innovative, and then when we come up with innovative ideas, the very next question that the client would ask me is, "Has anybody else done it already?" Because they would be afraid to do it first. And you
yeah,
say, well, why did you ask me about innovation? So I guess copying is the safety numbers become sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that if other people are kind of thinking the same ways, maybe we should be thinking that way as well. And then the third thing would be the risk aversion that kind of exists in so many companies, which is attached to the previous one, that people are from the legal reasons and also competitive reasons, they just do not want to tell you what they do. I've been kind of in contact, I had situations with companies where they've been doing something really good and innovative, but they didn't want to talk about it. Why would be revealing a competitive advantage? They say.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you on a people are not educated, so they can't really say something different because they don't know the topic deep enough to be able to explore it, to understand it, and unlayer it basically for us to see something different. Um, but also, there is something else that I have noticed is the fact that um, to tell a different story from something that is new. So imagine if you're on a plot of a story of your company and something disruptive comes along, you're bound to take risk to come up with a different story than what the status quo would be, wanting you to say. And I think that's another reason that people are kind of shying away from being the one who comes up with a different story about how the business could change and could look differently in the face of AI.
But because of the incentives in many of the companies, particularly bigger companies, people are rewarded on de-risking situations in the business, not on innovation. That's the problem. Basically, you are rewarded if you do not rock the boat. You are not so much rewarded if you constantly come up with new ideas and want to change things. And the whole system of incentives in many companies is simply against the, I would say, innovative behavior.
Yeah.
People change and companies change only when they absolutely have to, and if you ask Nokia, Motorola, many others, some of them not even then.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in terms of if somebody wants to, regardless of their role, but obviously we our audience are more senior executives, but regardless of their role, if they want to tell a story about how their business could interact or adopt AI, and what kind of future do we want to see in the business, what are the main things that you would say they have to follow, and how to come up with a really good story that would resonate with different stakeholders, because you've got investors who have to approve the budget for the story you're telling them. You've got your executive board who needs to get behind it, because they need to make sure they're not, they have their own risks to cover. And you have a business as usual to run, so you have your own current affairs that have to be run. So that, look, telling a story of a disruption that is going to be good is a different thing. And then in terms of your colleagues and the people you manage and the wider company, there is that fear, mostly the fear and anxiety of, what does it mean? Am I going to lose my job if you if you bring AI to this business? What is going to happen to me? And I see that in every single level of roles in an organization. I've had CEOs who their first question is, "Oh, is not going to replace me as a CEO." I'm like, nobody talked about that. Why would you even, why would you even bring that up?
Human
Through
nature.
the more junior people who uh, don't have the skill to necessarily cope with the uncertainty of what their role could look like.
So there's several things that I would say as kind of focuses for the story, and then maybe one way how I would tell it, or all of that I would tell kind of in a more or less similar way. But things that we can talk about. First of all, in organizational commercial situations, money talks. And the moment that you kind of frame the story through the point of money and can convincingly show, particularly if you do a business case, how, if you apply this, what's going to happen positively with our business, how are we going to unlock growth, how are we going to unlock new value for them, meaning for them, for the company. But then also, if you're trying to sell the story to different stakeholders within the company, for each of them individually or as a vertical, this is what it's going to do for sales, this is what it's going to do for marketing, this is what it's going to do for logistics, HR, and so on and so forth. Basically, we need to frame the story for each of the kind of key stakeholders, but showing money talks. This is how you're going to grow. This is how you're going to go get more money, or how you're going to save a lot of money. So that's basically the first thing. Why? Because a lot of people are still measured on financial performance, and framing it through financial performance immediately gets attention. Personalization is a very, very important thing. What this thing can do for you. And again, I'm just kind of expanding on what they said already, framing the story, that positive valence story, the potential benefit story for you specifically. And again, that could mean for your particular position in the company, but also for your, if you're running a department, what does that mean for your department overall? So I think that this kind of gets attention very, very quickly if we convincingly, and we shouldn't be having a lot of problem to do that if you convincingly frame the story through the monetary lens. The second one is the sense of urgency. Again, not fear, but the sense of urgency that things are unstoppable, that we cannot pretend that this is not happening. And maybe this is now kind of a good moment to start doing something about it, which means that we can see the train on the other side, but we should be afraid, but we have to kind of start paying attention to it now. And that sense of urgency, usually, if we show them examples how things are rapidly changing through AI, especially close to home, which means
Mhm.
either in our own category already, usually means
Yeah.
competitors, or really good testing that we've done within the company that is actually proving the bigger principle that now can allow us to jump and invest even more about it. Or maybe in categories that are close to ours. It doesn't have to be exactly our category, but complementary categories. It could be something in logistics, it could be something in HR, maybe some other areas that we see is happening in other companies, other verticals, where we say, look, this is quite similar to us in these particular regards. So if it really work well for them, very likely it's going to be working for us as well. Now is the moment to do it. The third one is the personal benefits. Now, playing on vanity of individual people, and I'm very blunt about it. Vanity is a very powerful force in modern business, particularly on senior levels, which is basically framing the story through improving personal reputation, getting a promotion, of course, but personal reputation. And the more the senior people are, the more probably they would like to be seen as industry leaders, change makers, people who are innovating, becoming a big name through innovation. All of these kind of personal benefits is another button to press, and again, convincingly showing them how, if they start going that way and adopting that thinking seriously and start exploring and experimenting with this technology in the areas that they can control, can actually bring them personal reputational benefits. And then only as the last resort, I would say, literally as the last resort, I would kind of play on fear, what's going to happen if you don't do it. But I would leave that literally as the last resort, because we've got so many kind of examples where fear paralyzed the company even more, and the company didn't do it. Even it was blindingly obvious to them what needs to be done, they couldn't do it, and then the company went bust, or key people left, or whatever. But not a lot of good things happened there. Now, if we kind of focus on the first three positive aspects, all of them could be and should be, in my mind, framed through the storytelling lens of drama, because every good story is a drama. It has a dramatic structure, basically, which means we need to stimulate emotions. And emotions are stimulated through the dramatic structure. What does that mean? Well, there's always a protagonist, a hero, that wants to do something. In this particular case, I want to become more famous, or I want to make more money for my company, or whatever. And the protagonist and the hero has some desires, some wants. They want to achieve something. And then there is an obstacle. Sometimes the obstacle is the circumstances, the environment, technology in this particular case, or it could be another person, another force that is actually forcing the protagonist to do it, which means that we have to fight with that thing, and we have to prevail. The prevail is the positive outcome that we want to achieve, and what we do through that conflict, how we usually call it, is the transformation. Transformation through a more perilous state of being, meaning there's a threat now, into a slightly more stable state of being, which is there's less of a threat for now, or there's actually new richness that we brought to the village, i.e., more money, better organizational structure, more effectiveness, all these kind of other things that AI can bring to us. People have evolved through stories and for storytelling. We are social beings. Our brain simply cannot help itself. It's made neurologically and evolutionarily made for stories. And story is one of kind of the best ways to attract our attention and to engage our emotions, drama particularly. So all the things that we were talking about, I would try to frame through some sort of a dramatical situation, some sort of a noble battle for a better state of being, whether on the organizational or the personal level.
So I want to test you now, or test your teaching. So you're in education space, in business education space mainly, or heavily. If you were going to tell a story of how AI is going to transform the education space, and how the universities need to be engaged with it, to the senior executives of the university, how would you go about to do that? And I know I haven't communicated that with you, so you're not prepared for this. I'm just putting it out there to see.
It's great to blue sky. Actually, I've done it in some of my kind of lecture while I was blue skying with my students, how it may look like. So basically, there's various ways to do it. It depends, again, on the objectives of the people that I'm talking to. If people on the other side are really, really innovative, they would like to do it, but they don't know what it means, then you actually tell them stories about, you bring to life the stories about what it means in practice. And you may say, well, think about having AI as an endless source. You don't have to chase knowledge anymore. You just need context. You need explanations and context. Knowledge, information is already there. You don't have to spend time teaching information. You can use the information that is easily accessible, but you can start contextualizing information, critical thinking, because AI can play the devil's advocate. So go and debate with AI. You have this position, AI is going to have the opposite position, or the other way around. You can do debates between people, but you can also use AI to train your debating skills at home without other people being around you. You can have a complete virtual choir of debaters on any possible topic, and you can actually base a lot of teaching on critical thinking and debating skills based on that. One way to think about it. I'm not going to even mention VR, what we can do teaching history and various other things through interact in VR, not even with goggles, but if you turn Windows, what Lockheed Martin did with a so-called field trip to Mars campaign, where actually they turned the school bus in America into a virtual reality, collective virtual reality environment, where kids in the bus actually were having a feeling they're traveling across Mars. Can you think about the possibilities of teaching history and actually seeing all those battles kind of happening on the other side of the window, whatever? So there's so many scenarios. We need scenarios, and then user scenarios. From the UX, we develop different user scenarios that we turn into stories. And we say, this is what it can do for you. Scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as many as you want, and then turn them into literally little plays that we tell them and we show them, so they can actually really see it in their mind's eye and physically even see how it may look like. This is basically what I would do. And different stakeholders, different people that I would be talking to, I would present different benefits for them. We also had debates at the BSL Business School in Lausanne, what I teach as well, at the Executive MBA, how to use AI as a teaching tool. People would kind of cheat and use ChatGPT. Of course, people would use ChatGPT and cheat, but then give them the assignments that are not easy to do through ChatGPT. Give them something that they have to explain through a personal experience, which means that for each of them is going to be unique. And then they can use ChatGPT to write it better, because many of the people do not speak good English. That's great. We did recommend to them use ChatGPT for that. But we told them, we need your different angles. We need your personal angles. And then we want you to contradict yourself and say, and this, what I think may not be true. All of the AI is a brilliant tool to kind of explore all of these different things. I don't have anything against that. So all these user scenarios should be developed in advance based on the stakeholders that we got on the other side, and then framed through, I would say, stories, through plays. They're literally like plays.
Cool. And I have one more question, which has a little bit of a heavier side, a bit of a dark side, because we know with any technological advancement there is going to be job misplacement or even businesses disappearing, because they are no longer the problem they exist to solve, no longer is a problem as a result of the technology advancement. And when I speak at events, I always bring the example of horse breeding as a business. When horses were used for transport heavily as the main means of transport, horse breeding was a different business than today. That is mostly a leisure. The scale of it is so much smaller, and sport and leisure, that kind of stuff. So some businesses will, as a result of AI, will completely be transformed to become a different type, and their scale of those businesses are going to be very much smaller to exist, because they are not going to be in the scale that they are today, and some of them might completely disappear. How, if you are in that kind of a business, or you're dealing with that kind of a business, how do you tell that a story? How do you tell a story that, without being too negative, without being playing on the fear, explain the story of the business? An example of those kind of sectors from my point of view is any kind of like recruitment, any mediatory kind of business, because any matchmaking type of business, because AI can do it really, really well, a lot more deeper than normal software would be doing, or people would be able to do. So I don't see, I'm not putting a timeline on it, but I don't see a future for recruitment, for example, as a whole sector, because AI would match people perfectly, find the perfect job for a person, the personality of a person. So how do you go? What's the best way to communicate that kind of a story?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because he does touch upon the negative aspects of history, I would say, because it is history. That environment is made around us, and very often we can't do a lot about it. Technology sort of has its own life, as we know, with the internet and many other technologies before that. And again, it's the question of whether people are going to be shutting down because they're totally scared and not thinking about it at all, or maybe they would see that even when the business needs to change dramatically, see the opportunities how to evolve it into a different shape. So I would start with the point of evolution. I would say nothing stays the same. Human nature is for things to never change. We know that, but actually nothing in nature stays the same. It changes all the time. So kind of train ourselves a little bit in accepting that side of life, and then again develop different user scenarios. How what we have at the moment can be actually can evolve into new business models, new skill sets, new businesses that we can start entering. Whether they're going to be the same size or smaller size, it's a different thing. Sometimes we can do something about it, sometimes we can't. But certainly, I would say take call centers. Call centers are going to be dead within a few years, right? We
Mm.
all know that. But think about the actual skill set, which business they are in, or they could be. If you've got human interaction, they actually can become very, very premium. And
Mhm.
I guess smart call center operators are going to be developing, if they're not doing it already, very premium, very personalized offer. They're going to be recruiting people for the call center from completely different backgrounds than now. First Direct did it in the 1980s when they launched the very first branchless bank, telephone-based bank. They recruited their call center was staffed with completely different kind of people. They recruited people from caring industries, nurses, ex-teachers, care home workers, similar kind of people, because they said it's very easy to teach somebody how to sell financial products. It's almost impossible to teach them how to care about people. So
Mhm.
they've had a premium call center experience. To be honest, this is not so much different from what is happening today. You may say, let's go into the premium
Yeah.
service, whatever that means for whichever business. So you can evolve it in different ways. You are evolving as well. Your company is evolving as well.
Mhm.
Development, now AI pivoting. Now we're going into education. Why? Because you've got the skill sets that you can evolve and flex in different ways, and AI is going to be a huge help to you. So, of course, it is possible. And we need to explore different user scenarios and different narratives about how to build on what we got already. But you are absolutely right. The key barrier is the psychological and emotional barrier. I
Mm.
would say anything that can reduce people's fear is the kind of very, very first good starting point. And the second one, how can we paint the future for them? Not just in facts and bullet points, so that they can feel it in their bones, that they can really see it in their mind. What could that mean for them in different transformational states? I think that's already a much better beginning.
Yeah. And do you see storytelling becoming more and more important factor for senior leaders and executives because of the complexities of the world? They need to be able to tell those kind of stories in the right way for people to follow and for businesses to thrive.
Well, if you look at the modern workplace, and particularly in developed countries, the so-called post-industrial workforce, this is kind of a lot of vectors that we are noticing already, and there's a kind of big movement called the post-heroic leadership,
Mm.
caring leadership, servant leadership. There's different names for it, but I really like the name post-heroic leadership, which means you cannot be just an alpha person. You now have to be a bit of a mentor, a bit of a father or a parent. Sorry, a bit of a coach, a bit of a trainer as well. It's kind of different functions that a leader now has to have. If you're trying to manage the post-industrial workforce, younger workforce, but also the combination of the younger and older workers, which is again another trend that is happening, a multicultural, multinational workforce. I mean, you just cannot go around barking orders all the time, right? Which means that you have to take people with you. And the only way, in my experience, that you can really take people with you if you have great narrative. A leader, usually great leaders have great stories behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Laz. As always, it's a delight to talk to you and hear your teachings and your wisdom. Is there anything you want to leave with the audience as a last piece of advice?
I could just kind of congratulate you on your kind of new pivoting, and all the best. My best wishes for the educational project that you're working on. And I know that you already appreciate the power of the stories a lot and apply them in your own business. And to be honest, I'm actually quoting some of your case studies in my teaching as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and have a wonderful day until I have you back here talking about another exciting topic.
All the best.
Thank you.